meal prep hacks. So the first hack or the first tip that we would want to share with everybody is to make a menu plan. What I love about making a menu plan is that it makes my life easier when it comes to making my grocery list. Of course, now that during the pandemic, we wouldn't want to stay outside for a long time, right? So at least with the menu plan, you would know what to cook within the week. The grocery list is better or easier to be done. And second of all is there's something to look forward to within the week. So with that, we actually normally say with everybody is to involve your family members to plan out your menu for the week so that there's something to look forward to within the week as well.
And to make it fair, I mean, with me and my husband, we have different favorite dishes. So when we plan out the meals, it's give and take.
Yeah, agree.
So that's tip number one, make a menu plan. And then the next tip is use your herbs and spices. What do I mean by that? When you think about it, all those instant mixes and all those packets and cubes, what are their origins? The real taste comes from herbs and spices. So I encourage you to experiment. Either you do real herbs and spices that are singular. This rack actually makes me very happy. It's quite complete. When you do your recipes, you can just pick out whatever you need. But let's say you don't want the thing. There are herbs and spices such as these that are already blended. All-purpose seasoning or herbs de Provence. So it makes food tastier without resorting to things that are synthetic.
Agree. So next is when you have your menu, this is where your marinated meats are coming in handy. So you've already made your menu, you have this meat there, just put it in your resealable packs and then put your marinades and then just put it in the freezer so that let's say you have been really busy the whole day and you're too tired to make your dinner, just take out one of the marinated meats in the freezer and then thaw it, ready to go on the pan to cook.
So having marinated meats in the freezer is sort of having a break in case of emergency bag ready to use when you don't have enough time to meal prep during the day. So we are showing on the screen a conventional longanisa recipe. Why are we doing this? Because we want to show you how to Baron method-fy a recipe. How we eat at home, we are not, we're not crazy. We still eat our tapa, our tocino. My favorite is lechon kawale. It's all about hacking it to make it healthier and friendlier to your body. So as with this conventional longanisa recipe, Anna, would you care to discuss the first ingredient?
Okay, so for the first ingredient, of course, is ground pork. So one of the steps that we Baron method defy it.
Yes, it's a bit of a tongue twister.
Yeah, it is. I think we have to change the term, but one of the things that we use is organic ground pork.
Yes, so what you can do, whatever meat that you're using, try to source organic and then ozonate.
Yes.
And then next on the list, there's brown sugar. When it comes to sugar, we don't like refined. So what we do is we recommend unrefined sugars such as muscovado, cocoa sugar, you can even use honey. But in our household, because muscovado is the cheapest option of unrefined sugar, that's what we use for marinades. And next ingredient is
smoked paprika. As what Ms. Aiza has mentioned earlier, just use your herbs and spices. In this case, the paprika that you can buy in the grocery, you can just use it.
So that paprika is fine. You don't need to exchange it with something else. But the next ingredient, vegetable oil. As we say in Baron method, everything starts with the
cooking oil.
So whatever oil that you use for cooking, whether it's for marinating or cooking, make sure that it is something that's not heavily processed with chemicals. So in this case, instead of vegetable oil, we would recommend using culinary coconut oil that is not RBD or refined, bleached, and deodorized with harmful chemicals. And then the next ingredient is coarse salt. What do we use, Anna?
So instead of using the iodized or coarse salt, you can just use sea salt that's readily available in the markets and even the groceries.
And then black pepper is fine, and then garlic. Garlic makes the world go round, as Harvey said. But that's how we Baron method-fy a recipe. And then our next tip,
once you have your marinated things in the freezer, you can always have your ready sauces and dressings in your households. Let's say, for me, there are times that I am really lazy to cook, and I just have fried chicken. At least I have that readily made pesto in the refrigerator. I can just take it out and then pour it on top of my chicken, and voila, you have a pesto chicken ready for dinner.
And then in our household, the favorite is peanut sauce. So what we would do is make a sauce for the week, And then let's say we have just grilled meat, we can use that as a dipping sauce. So something that's in the fridge that can instantly add flavor to your meals makes meal prep easier.
Agreed.
Okay, and next we have a conventional teriyaki sauce recipe. Again, we are going to Baron Method 5. Okay, so the first ingredient is sake. Sake is basically an alcohol. So what happened with me is during the extreme lockdown, we didn't have sake. So in a pinch, you can replace it with white wine if you want to, and it'll work as well. And then next ingredient is mirin. With mirin, what I want you to look at is the ingredients label. Make sure that it's only some sort of alcohol and some sort of sugar. Even better if you can find organic mirin. I think Organics has organic mirin.
Yeah, I think.
So, and then next for soy sauce, Anna, what can we replace soy sauce
For
with?
sauces, of course, you can always look for organic soy sauce. You know, there would also be liquid aminos, or even in the Philippines, recently I have discovered coconut aminos, which really works well also with teriyaki sauce.
Yes, and then last but not the least, for a conventional teriyaki sauce recipe, it calls for sugar. And most of the time, people use refined white sugar. But in this case, I would encourage you to use something unrefined. As mentioned before, muscovado is great because it has that caramel flavor that it lends to the teriyaki sauce recipe. So that's how we Baron Method-fy a conventional teriyaki sauce recipe.
So next, of course, as you can see on the screen, we have, you know, those temperature on how to make sure that your meat has been fully cooked. So these are just suggested, you know, on how to check if they're fully cooked. Of course, for poultry, you know, those kinds of temperature. But for beef, you can always use a food thermometer to check if they're fully done. But of course, if you don't have one, don't fret. It's not really a must. You can just use your own if you do have one. But just to check it, you just grab or you take a piece of your pork or meat from the pan of what you're cooking, slice it in half, and if there's blood, you just put it back in, just cook it again.
And an important note, as Anna would always say, is there such a thing as medium rare chicken?
Of course, there's not. The salmonella, guys, don't do that.
Yes, okay. So when it comes to beef, there's medium, rare, and those in between. But when it comes to chicken, you have to make sure that it is fully cooked so that you can avoid salmonella poisoning. Again, we are not asking you to go out there and buy a food thermometer, but if you have the budget for one, then it's a handy thing to have in the kitchen, especially if you're a novice in the kitchen. This saved me a lot because I didn't know how to cook at the start, and I would often serve meals that are raw to my husband, but he was so supportive, and then he got me a food thermometer, and that helped out a lot. And as time goes by, you know more or less if your food is cooked right. Okay? Next, we would like to discuss washing your kitchen surfaces and hands as often as you can. Even pre-pandemic, this should be a standard practice for anyone who is working in the kitchen. Now, how do we like to wash and sanitize our surfaces? Did you know that you can actually use ozonated water to sanitize a surface? We will discuss ozonation a little later, but what I would advise is after you touch something, whether it's raw or it's cooked, you have to wash your hands in between. Just make it a practice, you know, make a habit out of it because it's a good habit to have. Okay?
Yes. So next tip is, of course, separate. Please do not ever cross-contaminate. So if you do have different colored chopping boards, as you can see here, it is actually better to use. But let's say you don't have one, these colored ones, you just have to put label on the top right. Am I correct to say
Yes.
that? So that you don't get to use other kinds of chopping boards for different kinds of food.
So how we simplify it at home is I label the top corner, although this one has a label na it says fish, and then this one there's a cow, this one there's a chicken, and then this one there's a carrot. What we do is we put a little label either here or here with permanent marker, and if we can, put a piece of tape on top of it, just so it's easier for the household to identify which chopping board is for what. And normally, wooden chopping boards like these would be good for cheese, for bread. In our case, it's gluten-free bread because our method does not recommend bread. Okay, and then next we are going to talk about storage tips. Okay, the first tip that we have is
Do not ever ever refreeze your meats, guys. So once it has been taken out of the freezer and once it has been thawed, please do not put it back inside the freezer. It is because it is more prone to be having foodborne illnesses, because when you thaw the chicken or any meat, bacteria would come in, or
They start waking up
Waking
and
up,
growing
exactly.
and reproducing. So you have more bacterial contamination when you take it from the freezer and then thaw it and then freeze it and then thaw it. So ideally, what's the rule, Anna, for this?
you have to, again, take it out of the freezer, then thaw it in cold water, which we will be discussing more about later. And then let's say you wouldn't be using your thawed meat, you can just wrap it and then put it inside your refrigerator to be cooked the next day.
Yes, for the next meal or the next day.
Yes. Okay, so as you can see on the screen, these are just suggested storage time for the freezer. But you have to take into consideration that your freezer or chest freezer is in good or very good condition. So
Yes.
you can just search this on the internet, or it's also included in your handouts. So let's just scroll
A general
Yes.
guide, right?
General guide.
So again, you have to make sure that your freezer is in good condition. So this guideline is for a freezer that is well working,
Yes.
okay? And then next, we were talking about thawing the safe and proper way. So what's the right way to thaw, Anna?
The right way to thaw is ideally, for me, what I do is the night before I take it out of the freezer and I put inside the refrigerator, of course with a plate or even tray under, so that it will the liquid from the meat wouldn't
Contaminate,
other
yes.
ingredients. But let's say you're on a rush to
Yes.
make your meal.
There are days na we forget. We don't get to take it out from the freezer and then thaw it overnight. So what's the best practice if that happens?
You just soak it in cold water.
Yes, because
Cold
in the
water.
Philippines, I remember we like putting it just on the counter
Yes.
with lukewarm water. So
Yes.
it's supposed to be cold.
Yes, it's supposed to be
Okay. Okay. And then next, about storing marinated meats. We have something to show you. We have some marinated meat right here. And then we have a storage bag. This is reusable. It's a silicone bag. But some people still opt to use Ziploc bags that are disposable. That's on your comfort level. It depends what you really like, and that's okay. So what we would do is to basically put this inside and then take out the excess air to flatten. And that's how you store it. Let's try, Anna. I think kaya naman yan.
Okay.
So, there. So the worst thing that you can do is to seal it like this, and then there's excess air. So this air is going to take up space in your freezer. So what I would have you do is to press it down, and then you see now there's no air, and then you seal it. Sige, Anna, help me out. Let's seal. And then once you seal it, that's the time that you flatten it. So there's not much excess air. So after flattening, you see, it's flat. Why do we like it like this? Number one, it saves so much space in the freezer. When it's flattened out like this, there's no air occupying excess space in your freezer. Number two, when it's flattened out like this, it's easier to thaw out. So when you're in a rush and you really need to thaw out marinated meat, instead of it being in a big ball like that, where the surface area that gets thawed out is small, it's flattened out, it'll get thawed out faster. So that's our tip for storing marinated meats.
And of course, before we move on, one of the golden rules in storing your marinated meats is to put a label.
Yes, I forgot about that.
I mean, you wouldn't want to have surprises, right, Miss Aza?
Yes, so this one's not labeled, but just as a note, it is beef tapa. And if you're using reusable bags, what I would do is put a piece of cellophane tape and then label it there. Put the marker there so that I don't mark the reusable bag and then maybe I have salpicao instead and I'll think it's tapa because it's permanent marker. So please label your marinated meats instead of having surprise meats.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay?
Next is, of course, is in storing your sauces and dressings. You can do by batch or like in big jars. You can also do small jars like the one serving containers, or even the ice cube tray
Yes.
thing when it comes to your sauces.
So with the ice cube trays, the one that we use that for at home is to, let's say, saute vegetables or add a bit of sauce to the meat. So you pop out an ice cube and then a single serve vegetable dish, And at least you just have single serve. You don't have to bother opening
Yeah.
a big jar. But again, do what works for you. In our household, kasi what really works is having a big sauce of the week jar. And then we have the small ice cubes just for cooking.
And of course, guys, label. You don't want
Yes.
surprises again.
I keep forgetting. Huh? You learned from me.
Yes, I do learn a lot from her.
And then what's our next step, Anna?
Always check your refrigerator. I mean, you can just do it once a month, but basta you have to check your refrigerator that one, the refrigerator is 4 degrees Celsius or below.
At least,
At
yes.
least, and even your freezer is zero,
Below zero.
zero.
Yes. So how do you check that? You'll know if your fridge, some of the bottles are starting to sweat, meaning the bottle has little droplets of water, your fridge might not be cooling efficiently. One of the things that you can do instead of running out to buy a new fridge is to check the seal of your fridge. What do I mean by check the seal? You know, when you open the fridge, there's a bit of a give. I mean, it's not that easy to open.
There's
So parang there's a little
resistance.
resistance magnet type. So when you open it, if there's resistance, then your gasket or the rubber around your fridge is still okay. And then when you close it, it goes like that. You like that sound?
Yeah, I do love it.
Okay, so that means the gasket is still okay. But if there's no resistance and it doesn't make that closing sound that a fridge should, then maybe you should call the service center of the brand of fridge that you have, and maybe it's time to get the gasket changed.
In addition to that, I do want to remind everybody to space out your food items inside your
Yes,
refrigerator.
yes.
There are a lot of households that tend to forget that airflow should always be constant inside your refrigerator to keep your food fresh and of course good until the end of the week.
And on that note as well, you know the door of your fridge, there are certain food items that you're not supposed to store at the door of the fridge where the temperature fluctuates a lot. So for example, butter, cheese, yogurt, they're not supposed to be stored there because when the temperature fluctuates, it makes them spoil faster. So I would store maybe water, juices if you're into that type of thing at the door of the fridge, things that are not temperature sensitive.
So next, we have mentioned ozonating earlier when it comes to ground beef or ground pork with that. So as actually in summary, ozonating is just an enhanced way of cleaning your food.
Yes.
But before I continue in discussing, I will be showing you a short video on how it works.
Hi guys, I'm about to ozonate lunch. We're having steak. So, if you can see, we have the hose and it has that stone thing under. I'm just gonna turn it on. And then one cycle lasts for about 15 to 20 minutes. And we'll come back later to check what comes out of the steak. So that's what happens when you ozonate your food. You ozonate when it's raw, naturally. But this is beef. We've also ozonated seafood, which includes fish. We've done this with pork, with chicken. This is steak. And that icky bubble thing on top is the stuff that you don't want in your food. I'm gonna try to pick it up later to show you that it's not bubbles, but it's more of like a slimy thing. That's just gross. So, I'm gonna pick it up. See, it's not bubbles. It's like fat or something. And we tried drying this under the sun. It turns into something plasticky. So we recommend throwing it out in the garbage. You don't throw it down the sink because it's going to clog your sink. It's gross.
Okay, so with that, as you can see, the froth there is actually the antibiotics and hormones. And I know it's really disgusting, and that's one of the reasons why you really need an ozonator, so that you are very sure that your meats are clean and, without those bad stuff. And I've heard from Ms. Aza that she has seen from mother groups about children or girls having earlier menstruation because of that.
Yes, because of the hormones injected into chicken and high consumption of chicken, little girls are actually getting their period earlier and earlier. And that's quite alarming,
It is,
to be honest.
And to add to that, I also heard from her this very famous onion story that I've been telling you.
Yes, the onion story. So we have our suke, or the place that we regularly buy our vegetables from in the market prior to the pandemic. And so this lady who sells vegetables to us gave us a sample of a red onion. and she told us never to buy that particular type of onion. And we asked why. If it's too vibrant, then you have to question why is it too vibrant. Apparently, that onion was dipped in formaldehyde just to extend the shelf life. And of course, I was skeptical. I'm like, really? There are people who would dip vegetables in formaldehyde just to extend the shelf life? So we did a bit of an experiment. We left it on the shelf. And a year after, I kid you not, it was still bright purple. Not as vibrant as the start, but it did not develop any molds. That's scary.
It's really scary and weird because onions or any other vegetables
Should not even last a year.
that's true.
And so that's why we espouse ozonating. Just to make sure that whatever unwanted stuff, whether it's meat, whether it's fruits, whether it's vegetables, you get rid of it through the ozonation process.
Agree. And actually, as you can see on the screen, we have read articles recently during the pandemic on how it is very effective in preventing coronavirus. It's because the ozonator could actually kill the coronavirus by 90%.
That's a Japanese
There's
study.
a Japanese, yes. And they've actually placed those ozonators in their waiting areas inside the hospital. So it's not just in cleaning your food, but also in cleaning the air surrounding you. And even with sanitizing, right?
Yes, so we were discussing what you can do for ozonating in terms of sanitizing surfaces. You can take a pitcher of water and then ozonate it and use it to wipe down surfaces. But you use the ozonated water right after you ozonate it so that it is still potent to sanitize whatever surface you're going to put it on. So at least it's multi-purpose.
Yeah.
And then we move on to the next segment of our tips, pantry substitutions. And Anna will discuss the first one. I'm excited.
Me too. And as you can see, our most favorite condiment is soy sauce. So toyo is life. That's true. I mean, how can you eat tapa without toyo and even adobo without toyo? So just to continue, of course, on the left is the one of the things that we don't want the ingredients inside the soy sauce. And the one on the right, of course, you can always go for coconut aminos. Because soy sauce should only be water, soybean, wheat, and salt.
Yes. So, again, with substituting soy sauce, you have several options. As Harvey has discussed, soybean is actually one of the top inflammatories. But if you can find an organic alternative, then it becomes better. So we espouse using organic soy sauce. But if you want to eliminate soy totally from your diet, there's always coconut aminos. And in the Philippines, we are abundant in coconut products. So it is a bit cheaper. And we should actually take advantage of that.
Agree.
And then the next product in the Filipino pantry, first we have soy sauce, next we have vinegar. So with vinegar, unfortunately, most of the ones that are available in a conventional supermarket, you'll find that sometimes it has number 1, MSG, number 2, it has food coloring. I mean, this blows my mind. Vinegar is white, especially for white vinegar. It's white vinegar. Why do they need to put yellow food coloring?
Agree.
I don't understand. But then again, that's how it is, and we are here to give you other alternatives. So what alternative do we have for conventional vinegar? Number 1, cocoa sap vinegar is fantastic. Sukang tuba is fantastic. And actually, you can still buy white vinegar. It's all about flipping the bottle and then reading the ingredients label. As long as it's just water and some sort of vinegar, then you're good to go. Just make sure it doesn't have any additional ingredients like the food coloring that I mentioned, the one that you can see on the left side of your screen.
So next, of course, one of the ingredients or pantry staples that has been using in Filipino households is patis.
Or fish sauce.
Or fish sauce, sorry. So yes, patis is actually used to flavor food. And on the one on the left, of course, again, it has caramel color, the one that we don't like. But this flavor,
yes.
liquid, we don't even know what it is. So on the right is what we want, but this should only be fish, water, and salt.
Yes, that's correct. So again, in reality, companies come out with this because there is a monetary consideration, but you only have one body. So I urge you to please invest in your pantry staples. Now, again, we are not out there to ruin brands. This is precisely why we cover the brands of the ones that we don't recommend. But on the right, if you see certain brands that we are flashing, we still urge you to flip the bottle and read the label, because sometimes one particular brand can have multiple options. So let's say this brand has pure patis, and then it also has patis flavor, and then it also has just patis. What would be the difference between the three? Pure patis would probably be just what Anna mentioned. It's water, fish, and salt. And then patis flavor would be the one with the food coloring, and then artificial patis flavor. And then the ordinary patis would be something that has preservatives and food coloring. So it's all about reading the label. Don't fall in love with brands. Always check the label. And then the next ingredient in the pantry, which we always talk about. Everything starts with the
Cooking oil.
yes. So with cooking oil, we recommend an oil that is not processed heavily with chemicals. So on the left, you will see an RBD coconut oil. Although we like coconut oil that is not processed heavily with chemicals. No hexanes, no aflatoxins, no caustic soda. So we recommend a culinary coconut oil that is, if possible, organic, or if not, at least not processed with harmful chemicals. And then our next option for any pantry is olive oil. Pure olive oil. We are not talking about extra virgin olive oil, because extra virgin olive oil can burn easily when you cook with it. And not pomace, because pomace is basically what, Anna? Can you tell them?
It's just lattac olives. It's not really good.
So think about it. Extra virgin olive oil is first pressed from an olive, and then next is pure olive oil, and then after all that process, they want to make the most out of the olive. So they take the chemicals and everything, and then press whatever is left over from that olive, and that's what makes pomace. So again, we urge you to use culinary coconut oil because we are in the Philippines. But if, let's say, you're in some Mediterranean country, then you go with what is indigenous in that country, and that would be olives in that case. Okay, next.
So next, of course, we would like to sweeten our food and sweeten our lives.
Yes.
So of course, on the left, we wouldn't want you to use refined sugar. We can go for unrefined sugar, which includes coconut sugar, muscovado, and raw honey. I would want to emphasize to look for raw, unfiltered honey, because there are a lot of honeys in the market and even the groceries that says honey syrup, honey flavored syrup, and they're not the same. They're just deceiving you. So please, raw, unfiltered honey.
Read the label, guys. And last but not the least, let's talk about salt. Well, it's actually not last.
Yeah, not
Forgot,
last.
meron pa tayong isa. Okay, so instead of iodized salt, as a 90s kid, if you're a 90s kid like me, there was such a big movement to promote iodized salt because of iodine deficiency in the marginalized sector. When in fact, as an archipelago, we have so much access to seafood, and therefore we have access to iodine. So instead of iodized salt, we would recommend that you take sea salt or Himalayan pink salt.
So next, of course, we would love to have fried chicken. So what we can use is, instead of all-purpose flour, which we don't like because it's gluten or wheat, the ones that are very inflammatory to our body, we can always use gluten-free flour, like cassava flour, which is actually abundant here in the Philippines. Almond flour, if you want to use it for bread sometimes, or even other flours that is not, again,
Baking, actually, you can use coconut flour because it's quite sweet and it has that nice aftertaste. The point is, we have a host of other gluten-free alternatives that you can choose. Let's stay away from wheat. And then next, if you are a rice person, which every Filipino is and most Asians are, we would like to urge you to use unpolished rice instead of white rice. So what is unpolished rice? It can be pink, brown, red, black. What it means is there's more fiber, there's more trace minerals in the rice, and it doesn't convert to sugar as easily in the body because it's unprocessed. So again, if rice is life, do the colored rice, but
no Java rice or even...
Java rice is yellow, but it's not processed rice. Yes. And of course, the next question is,
what do I eat now? So we have been telling you what not to eat and what to substitute your pantry ingredients with. So now, what do I eat now? So there are a lot of questions in mind what I can cook. So as you can see on the screen, these are some pictures from our clients that they have cooked. So you can always have your fish, your salads, your sauces on the side. Even lechon kawale that actually Miss Aza loves. You can always make it at home. Yes, lechon kawale is life. But of course, you just have to do it in moderation or eat it in moderation. You can have your Mediterranean meals, your pasta. You can go for brown rice pasta, even for snacks. I didn't know that actually. I recently discovered this from Miss Aza that you can always make onion rings,
Yes.
healthy onion rings.
So how did we make that healthy? Number one, the breading that we used is gluten-free. We used cassava flour that is seasoned with spices. And then number two, we used a good oil to fry with. Plus, we didn't reuse the
Oil.
yes. So we don't reuse the cooking oil.
Agreed.
Okay.
And of course, for pancakes once in a while, if you do want to have pancakes for breakfast, just look for gluten-free and of course organic if you can with pancakes.
Okay.
So recipes, my favorite part from Mrs. Baron method here. As you can see, some of these we're going to show you, but all of these are also available in her social media handles
Yes.
like your Facebook, IG, and all.
So no need to take a photo of
Yeah.
it. But the way that I make recipes, Anna, at home is it depends on what my cravings are and what my family is craving for. For example, this cereal prawn or cornflake prawn recipe that I made is because during the lockdown, the kids and even my husband Harvey missed eating at a particular Chinese restaurant. But luckily, I had organic cornflakes at home. Here's another tip, guys. Keep your eyes peeled for organic ingredients and organic food items in a conventional grocery because you'd be surprised. There's actually quite a lot now. I mean, there's more and more options. So with this one, the shrimp or the prawns, we breaded in cassava flour, fried in oil, culinary coconut oil, just used once, and then I made light mayo. But then again, now that everything is a bit more back to normal, I don't really have time to make mayo from scratch, but there is organic mayonnaise in organics.ph or even conventional grocery stores. So just keep an eye out for it. So we tossed the prawns, coated it in mayonnaise, and then put the cornflakes on. And then we have cornflake prawns.
Actually, I'm planning to make this, someday, but at least you have the recipe on the screen and even on social media. Next is this famous, I'm not gonna call it sushi anymore.
It's just a tray bake.
It's just a
because
tray bake,
It's cooked
yeah.
there. They
It's
were
just
saying that it's
a-
not sushi when
Agree,
it's
agree.
fully cooked.
You might get scolded at by the Japanese,
Yes.
but again, you can always make your homemade tray bake with, of course, instead of using those, what do you call this, Miss Aza?
Tomiko or
Tomiko.
ebiko, which is the small eggs that you see in sushi being used. It's sometimes black, sometimes green, but most of the time it's bright orange. Did you know that it has a lot of food coloring?
Yeah.
So I discovered that when I was making this tray bake at home because I went out to buy ingredients, and then when I looked at the pack, there's so much food coloring. We're not just talking about orange. There's yellow, red, blue food coloring in one pack. And in fact, the real alternative to that is ikura.
It's ikura. Yeah.
But it's
yeah.
expensive. So that's why people are using Tomiko or Ebiko. So in this particular recipe, I opted not to use it and then just put maybe spring onions fresh and sesame seeds for the crunch. So there are ways to make things healthy. That's the point.
Agree. And it actually tastes so much better if you use, fresh seafoods that has been ozonated, organic cheese, right? Miss Lisa?
Yes.
And even organic mayonnaise. So
Yes.
there are a lot of things naman that you can always make at your household. So next, I love popcorn and even fries. I discovered this from Miss Aza. If you can make your sour cream powder with the use of organic
Milk powder,
milk
yes.
powder, of course. And then onion powder, your seasoning at home. And of course, for cheese, because I would want to lessen my dairy intake as well, I use nutritional yeast. And just to add to that, it's actually very, very different from the yeast that Harvey mentioned. This is the inactive one.
Yes. So in fact, with this recipe, even if you don't put nutritional yeast, the flavor is very similar na to sour cream. So you can opt to eliminate that totally. And you can also use it for shrimp popcorn, chicken popcorn.
Chicken popcorn.
So it's a nice alternative, no? And I even have a barbecue powder recipe on my IG if you're interested, then you can check it out.
But let's say you don't have the time to make this sour cream or even barbecue powder,
Yes.
and you just want to have that flavoring already, you can always purchase it from organics.ph.
Well, that's the funny thing eh.
Yeah.
We give out the recipes most of the time, but we understand rather that time constraints are real. So we offer you an alternative
Yeah.
to buy it ready-made.
So next, the favorite Filipino merienda or snack is homemade turon. Instead of using, for the wrapper, instead of using that lumpia wrapper that is readily available in the groceries, you can also use rice wrappers. It's
Yes.
better. It
So
doesn't
at
have
least it's gluten-free.
Yeah, it's gluten free. And
Go
yes.
ahead.
And when it comes to sweetening it, you can always use muscovado sugar, which is actually very good in the caramelization of the sugar. And lastly, we didn't reuse our oil. We always use the oil one.
Yes. And if you'd like a different flavor, you can also try to use coconut sugar.
Yes. You have to try it. So good. And this actually is one of the things that I would want to make soon, this dairy-free flan. Remember our traditional leche flan, but in this case, I will hand it over to Miss Aza on how she made it.
So because we wanted something like a dairy-free option, we opted to use dairy-free milk options. In this case, it's coconut and almond milk. But we've also tried making it with pure coconut milk, and it's actually better because the taste of almond milk is a bit strong.
Yeah.
So it's basically mixing ingredients that are unrefined, that are cleaner and friendlier to the body to make your favorite desserts. In fact, we recently made creme caramel or parang leche flan at home using organic condensed milk and organic evaporated milk, which is also in organics.ph.
I didn't know we have
And
that
it was-
already.
I'll let you try next time. She's asking me for sample. But here, what we're trying to show you is whatever household favorites you have, whatever dishes you grew up with, we can make it friendlier to the body by choosing the right ingredients.
Agree. I mean, you don't have to eat food that are very bland just to
Yes.
feel that health or very nutritious food for your body.
In fact, I often get, the butt of jokes. We become the butt of jokes na, oh, healthy yan, because everyone knows that we eat healthy. And often they would give us a plate of salad, or just because a dish has a bit of vegetables, they think it's healthy. It's not about that. It's about the other ingredients as well.